So it turns out that oftentimes, surprise, we don't do what we say we want to do. In fact, we don't do the things that we know we ought to do. There's a quote that I like by the entrepreneur Derek Sivers that said that if more information were all that were needed to be successful, we would all be billionaires with perfect abs. In many ways, that summarizes the situation. There was a study that was done a few years back of 10,000 leaders by the Management Research Group. 97% of them agreed on what the number one factor is in determining a company's success. And that is spending time on the strategic direction. 97%. That's as unanimous as we can possibly get in our culture. And yet, in a separate study that was done by the Strategic Thinking Institute, 96% of leaders, almost exactly as many, 96% of leaders said that they did not have enough time for strategic thinking. So what accounts for this? There's the famous saying, right? We vote with our feet. Don't look at what we say, look at what we do. Why are people, if we claim that strategy is so essential, actually not doing it, not making that space? Well, you guys are a room full of management thinkers and business leaders. You probably know the reason. It's incentives. And let me suggest to you what those incentives might be and how we can begin to counteract them so we can actually start to do what really is most important. First of all, there are incentives that come from the company. Now, there was a study that was done by Kim Whedon at Cornell University that showed that employees who work long hours, extra hours, 50 plus hours per week, on average were paid 6% more than their colleagues. So we know from demonstrated behavior that companies reward people who put in face time, who put in time at their desks. And you probably also know from your own lived experience that it can be hard with knowledge work, white-collar work, to really determine the quality of people's output sometimes. And so face time, hours at work, become a proxy for productivity and for loyalty. That gets rewarded in our business culture. That's a pretty powerful force. Now the problem, the trick with that is that research has also shown that those are the exact wrong things to be rewarding. At almost exactly that inflection point of working long hours, 50 plus hours per week that you get financially rewarded for, it turns out that is the exact place where your productivity actually starts to decline, according to research done by John Penkoval at Stanford University. Now, what does make you more productive? What does make you more creative, more innovative, if not putting in more time at your desk? Well, research by another pair of Stanford researchers, Apezzo and Schwartz, points to an answer, and that is taking a walk. Actually getting up away from your desk and taking a walk is what is most likely to help you be more productive when you get back to your desk, to have more innovative ideas. But of course, we all know the problem here. It's an optics problem. You look like you're slacking off. Oh, she's the one that's always going off to take a walk. Doesn't look good. And it's not currently what gets rewarded in our corporate life. That's one big challenge when it comes to the incentives that we've set up. Now the other, which is a very hard incentive to fight back against, are the internal incentives, the personal incentives. In 2014, the Oxford English Dictionary added the word crazy. Now you might say, Dorie, crazy has been a word before 2014, and indeed it has. But before 2014, it was an adjective. Starting in 2014, it was officially recognized as an adverb, as in crazy busy. You may have heard that phrase, that formulation, which has become more and more ubiquitous in our society. How are you doing? I am crazy busy. People say that over and over again. And why? It's because busyness has become a form of status in our society. It makes us feel important. It makes us feel and seem to the outside world to be important, to be necessary, to be in demand. So there's an internal incentive as well. So what do we do about this? How do we fight back against the forces, company and internal, that prevent us from actually doing what we know, what we state is most important, which is making that time for strategy? I have 3 suggestions, 3 possibilities for you. The first is recognizing and understanding that, frankly, it does not actually take a lot of time to do this strategy work. Sometimes we say, oh, well, when we have more time, when we have a retreat, when I can set aside a day, when I can set aside a weekend, those times almost never come when you are a busy leader. In my book, Stand Out, I interviewed David Allen, the productivity expert. And he had a great phrase. He said, it doesn't take time to come up with a breakthrough idea, it takes space. And what he meant was mental space. We have to willfully shut out for just a moment the emails, the meetings, the demands, and create mental space. But you can have good strategic thinking in the time you have, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. You can make that time. Number 2 is understanding where your time is going currently. I actually embarked earlier this year, and I wrote about it for Harvard Business Review, on a time tracking experiment. During the month of February, I charted every 15 minutes that I spent. I wrote it down at the end of every day so that I could understand how much time I actually was spending on email or in meetings or networking, and see where that time went so you can identify the pockets so that you can build in more time for strategy. And the third and final piece is, in many ways, creating a reframe for yourself about what busyness means. There's another quote by Derek Sivers that I want to close with, and that is, busy is what happens when you're at the mercy of someone else's schedule. We need, in our culture, to shift from a model of busyness means you're important and in demand to busyness means that you are not controlling your own time. If we make that shift in our own minds, we realize busyness is a choice. We can choose as leaders, as professionals, how and where we want to allocate our time, and even more than that, our mental space. We know strategy is important. Now we have to choose to stop making excuses not to do it. Thank you.